Lolita or a filmed criminal, whichever you prefer. And you know, every time I'm on TikTok and I see a video politely explaining that the dress someone bought for cosplay can't also be used for EGL, because it doesn't have the shape or it doesn't look good, I look at the comments and people are calling the original poster a gatekeeper, or that they're being mean and cruel to a newbie, and that's just simply not the case a lot of the time. I understand that way of thinking a bit, but every day I see posts saying EGL is so gatekept, the community is so scary, you need a lot of— I'm sorry, my cat, he's just very all over the place. Come here, baby. The community is scary, you need a lot of money to join, but is that really true? I wanted to come on here and talk about this a bit, since nearly 6 years ago, I felt the same way. So before I begin, you might see me looking off. That is because I'm looking at my script. I wrote this whole thing out and I wanted to plan it and have my thoughts cohesive so that you guys get what point I'm trying to make. So yeah, let's dive in. So what even is gatekeeping? Gatekeeping is the act of preventing someone from being a part of a community for reasons that can range from race or skin color, sex, disability, finances, usually for things that are outside of the person's control, at least in the context of what we're talking about today. EGL is a Japanese street fashion that originated in Japan and made its way over here to the West. There are general rules to this fashion, maybe more than your average alternative fashion like goth or emo, but that doesn't mean that it's difficult or gatekeeping. To make sure EGL stays recognizable in actual fashion style, these rules are upheld by most of the community out of respect for the fashion itself. For example, someone here in the West would not be considered emo if they were wearing colorful clothes and covered in stickers and hair clips. That's just not what emo is, unfortunately. Also, there's nothing wrong with not being a Lolita. You're allowed to have Lolita adjacent and or inspired outfits, and while they aren't EGL directly, they'd still be their own style, which is still cool as hell. You don't have to belong to a certain fashion style, you can just wear what you want. But like I said, you cannot call yourself a Lolita if all you have is cheap made dresses and kitty ears from a convention that you don't even wear a petticoat with. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. And there isn't anything wrong with that. It just isn't Lolita at the end of the day. This is not gatekeeping. Gatekeeping would be saying, for example, you're too fat to wear EGL, or your cord is only Taobao, you're not a real Lolita. TLDR, EGL has rules to uphold its recognizable look, and people who don't follow these rules do not fit into the criteria of EGL. This is not gatekeeping. Also, just to clarify, this does not include being well established in the fashion and going without a blouse, for example. Those who have been in the fashion for a long time know how to intentionally break the rules while it's still considered Lolita fashion. Myth number 1, you have to be rich by AP to participate. So when I see these posts on social media about the cheap made cosplays, dresses, or mass-produced slot from Temu or Shein, and someone corrects the person and informs them it isn't Lolita, they get attacked, absolutely ransacked in the comments for saying so, when in reality it just isn't. The most common comeback is, well, poor people deserve nice things too, or, well, what if I can't afford a $600 dress and all I can afford is a cheap AliExpress ripoff? And guys, let's be real here for a second, okay? So first, poor people do deserve nice things. I agree wholeheartedly with that. But your Amazon.com coordinate is going to break in a few years and look bad. And also it's expensive, more expensive than secondhand Lolita, which we'll get into. I have never seen an Amazon replica look good, ever. And also, there's Taobao, Lace Market, anything other than Amazon, Shein, Temu, AliExpress, if you're inexperienced, or TikTok Shop. Please don't buy the rip-off Milky Chan coat. Please, please don't buy that. Second, if you are in such financial hardship that you can't even afford bare necessities like food or healthcare, it is perfectly okay to shift your focus from Lolita for the time being. I'm not trying to be harsh, and I understand how frustrating it is to hear this when all you want is to just be a Lolita and wear the fashion, but Lolita will be here for you when you're stable again. You shouldn't be sacrificing necessities to afford dresses. That's just It's a little backwards. You shouldn't be doing that. And I'm not saying it can't be cheap, by the way. I'm saying that you have other priorities you need to sort out before diving into EGL. EGL is a hobby at the end of the day, not a requirement for living. Also, another reason not to buy from these sites that sell replicas and mass-produced garbage is because those actually making them are also poor and being taken advantage of by their employers. They are working for pennies a day in dangerous conditions. Sometimes children are making these dresses. Being broke and not being able to afford something you want doesn't mean it's a free pass to just buy something that was made with actual slave labor. There are always more ethical options when it comes to EGL. Third, like I said, there are cheaper alternatives to brand that look very similar in style. For jewelry, there's brands like Dandy Puppeteer, Cat Tea Party, and Alice in Halloween. I have pieces from all of them. Brands like Enchanted Dreamwear for socks, Infanta, or one of the big ones, Bodyline. I started out with Bodyline, especially when I was a super broke, just out of high school, between high school jobs, college student. There is a whole world on sites like 42 Lolita that you have not even seen. There's also Lace Market, where you can find every sub-style for cheap, sometimes even new with tags. I got this new with tags. With sellers that ship all over the world from so many different countries. I got a really popular Baby the Starshine bright print skirt for like 25 to 30 bucks. And I also got a very popular AP print for 105, and also other very beautiful pieces that I've scoured the depths of Lace Market for. Yes, EGL in comparison to other hobbies can be expensive, but there are still ways to experience it without exploiting unethical practices, not going into debt, and still making good coordinates. Myth 2. The community hates newbies. Another misconception is that the EGL community hates newbies, and let me tell you now, this is very far from the truth. People perpetuate this myth because of old drama sites like LiveJournal or Behind the Bows. There are grouchy, mean Lolitas in the community, yes, but that doesn't mean there aren't thousands upon thousands of Lolitas who are willing to help, who have helped newbies. There are so many guides and tutorials on Lolita if you looked for them. I feel like this is where a lot of people who are Lolitas at heart or coming from TikTok have the most issues. A lot of newbies come from platforms like TikTok where information is spoon-fed to them. And at this point in time, it's kind of expected on those platforms. So they don't realize how much of Lolita culture is built around self-research and looking into things yourself. There isn't always a straightforward answer. You have to find that answer yourself. There are so many guides and tutorials and information online and even magazines about Lolita, and most of it is incredibly searchable. The information online is better than it's ever been because people are pouring hours of hard work and effort into videos and blogs specifically to help newbies. And personally, I love helping Lolitas. I was there once myself, and those blogs and videos and tutorials really helped me, and I want to give back to the community. However, just because someone is giving you constructive criticism, also known as concrete, in your comments does not mean they're trying to be rude to you. Uncalled for, probably, but useful, yes. As long as they aren't being actively hostile or backhanded, you should use that advice to make your cords better. You should want to get better in Lolita fashion, in my opinion. This is another thing I want to touch on. As a Lolita, especially if you're relatively new, you should always be improving, whether subtly, very noticeably, or somewhere in between. It doesn't matter if you realize it or not. Finding new, better ways to improve your coordinates, and maybe even more interesting ways to add different colors, textures, shapes. Lolita is an art form, just like painting or sculpting. When you refuse to take others' advice or don't try to improve at all, you're going to stagnate and probably lose interest at some point. This is the fate of many people who discovered Lolita post 2020 on TikTok. They don't immediately out of the gate look how they want to and never ask why. And the answer to that question is what I said a minute ago. You need to do research. You need to invest in decent clothes. Taobao and Bodyline are extremely good for this early point in time of being Lolita. And you absolutely 100% should, and I'd even argue need, to listen to those who paved the path you're working on. I promise you that most people who comment concrete on videos of newer Lolitas aren't trying to be mean. They're trying to help them succeed in the fashion. Lastly, context matters. Timing, tone, and consenting to feedback all matter, of course. But being given feedback in and itself isn't being mean. You're not required to accept and adhere to every piece of advice, but ignoring all feedback and then saying it's harassment is where issues begin to form and take hold. Myth 3. Strict rules are elitist. Okay, y'all, I need you to hear me very carefully when I talk about this topic. EGL has to have rules in order to be preserved and maintain its very recognizable look. I'm also not talking about the rules that were popular in the 2010s about having to spend a lot of money or worshipping brands from Japan. No, I'm talking about the construction of the skirt and if it holds a petticoat without lampshading or looking completely messed up, the quality of the fabric and texture, the motifs within the print, and if they're fine with Lolita at its core. That is what I am referring to here. When you look at these two images of me, which one looks like Lolita fashion to you? Let's be real here, we both know which one is proper Lolita, right? I used to claim the one with the suspender skirt was Lolita fashion and got pissed when people told me it wasn't. Now that I'm established in the fashion and have been for nearly 6 years now, I can tell you that outfits like this are not in any way even closely resembling the fashion, and the reason why is because there are rules in place. What would EGL become if all of a sudden we stopped having rules and guidelines just because we got told we're elitist or gatekeeping for having them? Other alternative fashions, such as goth and GRIK, have rules as well, but for some reason I only see Lolita fashion getting shit on for having them. Every subculture has a limit to what's included within them. That's how they stay distinct from each other. I hate to break it to you guys, but the integrity of the fashion, its instinctive look, the mannerisms, the culture as a whole is worth protecting, and this includes keeping things that don't fit the rules from being labeled as Lolita. Question: would you pull up to a fursuit only function in a t-shirt and jeans and then complain they're being elitist when they don't let you in? But for some odd reason, when other fashions have rules and guidelines as to what is and what is not included in that fashion, especially Lolita, it's suddenly a problem? Another example. Go to a historical 1800s fashion-themed ball in an Amazon corset and a thrifted skirt from the 70s, and you get turned away from not following the rules. Would you complain that everyone is a hater and elitist, or would you recognize that you didn't meet the criteria for entry? It's okay for things to have rules in a bar for entry. This is how fashion subcultures stay alive. One other thing I do want to mention, there is no rule saying Taobao, indie, and Bodyline aren't real Lolita. The people who say this are usually trying to put themselves on a pedestal, looking to be the best Lolita in the community for rejecting cheaper options and going the absolute most expensive prices to prove a point that they're rich. This way of thinking isn't about preserving Lolita, it's about their social status, and it usually includes dismissive or xenophobic attitudes towards Chinese brands. Do not take these Lolita's words as law. Some people use rare, expensive prints to gain social brownie points or followers and try to present themselves as the pinnacle of EGL, but that isn't how authority in this fashion works. Lolita isn't defined by price, popularity, or what prints you own. It's defined by silhouette, coordination, and adherence to the fashion's general rules. Even if you think you're bad at it or you don't have a closet full of brand like popular creators, as long as you're following the general rules of EGL, then you absolutely are a real Lolita. Myth number 4. You have to look a certain way to wear EGL. Just a heads up, this section has brief mentions of body policing and harmful behavior present in the community in the past. There is a timestamp on screen right now, as well as in the video description, to skip this next section. Please watch only if you are comfortable. Okay, so let's get this out of the way right now. Historically speaking, EGL brands from Asian countries were not size inclusive until relatively recently, within the last decade or so, which meant plus size and tall people were often excluded as the default. It is largely still like this in the Asian EGL community, unfortunately. There used to be a lot of really mean stereotypes and cruel jokes towards people who didn't fit into brand because, well, brand is the best and you should worship them, like I said earlier. And from this, body policing began happening in the Lolita community. A lot of Westerners do this with Asian fashions, and it was bad. Like, it was actually so harmful. People were developing disordered eating habits and trying to encourage others to do the same. Anyone who didn't meet this weird, restrictive standard was targeted. Trans people, people of color, disabled, tall, heavier, etc. There was a genuinely surprising amount of the online community who claimed that if you weren't the perfect 2010s angelic pretty wearing sweet Lolita, you were Ida, ugly, and deserved to be made fun of. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I still see an alarming amount of Lolitas who perpetuate this harmful and shove it onto newbies. It isn't most Lolitas who do this, not even close, but there are a lot of people left with this mindset, and it genuinely harms this community and those within it. However, I want to make it very clear, the vast majority of the community does not give a damn. I want to make it very clear. I, and most others online nowadays, literally do not care. Doesn't matter what your body or skin looks like, your abilities or disabilities, or if you fit into an outdated and cruel stereotype. You belong here. The vocal minority do not represent us as a whole. If you go on TikTok, Tumblr, Instagram, any social media site, and search for quality about yourself plus Lolita fashion, you will find so many other people who look like you. Black Lolitas, tall Lolitas, queer Lolitas, Lolitas who use mobility aids, Lolitas who thrift. Are you getting my point here? Following other tall and plus-size Lolitas changed everything for me. I immediately saw that I wasn't alone in my struggles with this fashion, and that there are people who are rebuilding this community into something better and more welcoming than it was before. My advice to you, if you're new here or you're feeling a little isolated, focus on finding people like yourself and build the community you want to see. Be the change that needs to happen. Don't let some group of unhappy individuals convince you that this fashion isn't for you. Lolita was never meant to be worn by one kind of person. It was meant to be worn by everyone who loves it. Myth number 5. EGL is dying, the community is too small. The last two somewhat related myths I wanted to mention today are EGL is dying and that the community is small. To be quite frank with y'all, these are just not true at all. First, EGL is not even close to dying yet. It has definitely changed since 2005 and from 2005 to 2010, 2010 to now. Especially with the relatively recent inclusion of Western indie brands and super especially with Chinese brands. The rules are a lot more lax now than they ever have been, and I don't see them becoming as strict and harmful again like they were in the past. I believe that this myth is perpetuated by old school Lolitas because of the death and decay of old community spaces like EGL LiveJournal and in general, blogs. There aren't a lot of spaces like that anymore, and most Lolitas just create vlogs instead of blogging now since it's a lot easier to convey tone, more accessible to those who can't build their own blog websites or struggle with disabilities like not typing without pain and can't read text on screens very well, and a lot easier for people to discover them through social media algorithms. I miss the old yearly wardrobe updates on LiveJournal as much as any other Lolita does. Those are very nostalgic and I really enjoyed them. But that era is gone. Another reason why it may feel like the community is dying or small is because we're all hiding out in private Facebook groups that you have to find through the global Lolita directory, which I will link below. I'm not even joking, like every major city, honestly every city, like major city in the US and other countries has a Lolita community. Like I'm not even joking. Like that list is so long. We aren't gone, we're just hosting private events that aren't easily searchable. Also, a lot of Lolitas just don't have or want an online presence. With that being said, there still is a huge community of Lolitas on TikTok, Instagram, that little red book, and some on YouTube as well. When people say a community is small, they usually base it off of what they see online. Followers, hashtag uses, videos published, but the thing is, fashions like Lolita don't typically get measured that way for a reason. EGL and other similar Japanese fashions are based on consistency and longevity rather than trends. As for the people saying the community is small, I personally don't think that that's true. In comparison to other alternative Japanese fashions, we are probably amongst the biggest and most active online. Gyaru is huge, decor is kind of huge, and I feel like EGL fits in around there somewhere. We're still very small in comparison to bigger mainstream fashions like goth or punk, but we're still fairly large for our niche in our corner of the internet. The popularity of Lolita comes in waves, especially now with TikTok being a thing. I keep mentioning TikTok as well, but that is where a lot of the community is now these days. And every few years, there is a sudden boom of new people joining the community. I personally joined during the sweet boom of the 2020s, actually 2020, like at the beginning, and 2023 also saw a lot of Lolitas joining as well. Honestly, I'd say the 2020s have been big for EGL. I mean, dude, like, we literally just saw a baby on the New York Fashion Week runway, like, a year ago. That is a big thing. You know, and that also drew people in who didn't know what the fashion was, saw that, were like, that's cool, let me look into that, and now they're in the fashion. I think Lolita is bigger than ever, honestly, and we're going to see it rise even further in popularity, especially with events happening like New York Fashion Week with Baby the Star Shine Bright. I think that we should stop measuring the popularity of a fashion on what we see online and what is actually happening. You know, I don't think there's like a true way to measure it, but Lolita is definitely a lot bigger than it was in the 2010s, and honestly, my personal opinion, I think it's bigger than ever. So this section, I want to be clear that I'm talking about broad patterns and community dynamics here, not individual incidents, call-outs, or personal disputes. This is about understanding the fashion and the culture around it, not resharing or rehashing drama. Gatekeeping does happen from time to time, more likely a lot more frequently than I imagine, or a lot of us would imagine. I acknowledge that yes, exclusionary behavior and bias can and do exist in both online and real-life spaces. But this isn't representative of the community as a whole. The vast majority of Lolitas don't care what brands you wear, what skin color you have, your weight, or how you choose to present yourself. As long as you follow the guidelines of how to wear the fashion and you have a genuine love and passion for it, you're a real Lolita. That's all it takes. There are also so many social circles within Lolita on places like Instagram, and again, I'm sorry I keep saying this, but TikTok, even YouTube now. YouTube kind of used to be like the Wild West for Lolita, and now there's a lot more YouTubers. I truly believe that everyone fits in somewhere with people who are nice and supportive. Not saying you should expect Lolitas to be lovelies or that stereotype that was popular in the 2010s. Nothing like that. But people do care and want to see others experience Lolita fashion for the first time. If one place isn't for you, there's always other spaces. To touch very lightly on this as well, all of the issues in the community are people problems, not issues with the fashion itself. Again, the issue lies with some people in the community and not the community itself, if that makes sense. So, you know, don't not wear the fashion because of the people within it. You can wear it for yourself. You know, that's a very valid reason to wear Lolita fashion. I know of many Lolitas, myself included, who are trying to be the change in social culture that this fashion still needs. Lastly, how newcomers can join without fear. I wanted to give a mini guide on how you can join the community without fear. Firstly, start off with collecting cohesive coordinates that flow well. Don't try to adapt non-Lolita pieces into something vaguely fitting the rules of the fashion. Focus on getting actual legitimate brand pieces. Not just baby or anything, you know, Taobao, bodyline as well. This will build a strong foundation for whatever kind of Lolita you're going to become. Bodyline, Lace Market, 42 Lolita, Wonderwelt, Closet Child, these are all great places to buy from when you're starting out. Always check out the piece on Lawlibrary to see the price it sold for initially upon release, and use Lace Market as well to see what it currently sells for. On Lace Market, you can do this by going into the advanced filters on the search dropdown and selecting active and completed. This will show you both all the active listings and what they're going for, if there are any, and it'll show you the completed listings, you know, whether they expired or people bought them or people bid on them. It'll show you what they ended at or if they just ended, period. By the way, Lawlibrary will be linked down below, but on most Lace Market listings, you will be able to find it in the tags at the very bottom. Find people at your skill level online and maybe become mutuals with them to grow together. That's what I did when I first started out, and it really helped me bounce ideas off of people. Join online communities and ask for advice on cords because you cannot improve unless you challenge yourself to get better. Find and follow people with cords you like and try to understand what makes them look so appealing to you and how you can use that to refine and polish your own coordinating skills. Wardrobe challenges work for improvement as well. Capsule wardrobes, coordinating challenges, building coordinates around a theme are all great. Once you feel confident in your skills, try and join an in-person or online meetup to meet new people and maybe find some friends within the community. Lastly, I want to emphasize that there is no rush or obligation to ever join the community. If you're more of a Lolita, that's great. More social? Cool, find a friend group. Do whatever you are comfortable with that will make you happy at the end of the day, because in the end, that is what fashion in general, even Lolita fashion, is about. Being comfortable and happy with the way that you dress. So, to answer everything in one go, most myths come from old drama, exaggerations on social media, simple misunderstandings. If you are on the fence about joining EGL, take my advice, just do it. It's so worth it. I met 2 of my best friends and many more friends and mutuals from around the world. I've gotten to model for big brands at conventions. I found my voice as a content creator, all because I wear this fashion. You may not want those things for yourself, and that's fine. What I'm trying to get at here is that you have the ability to carve your own path in EGL and experience things that you never would have had you never joined. That is going to wrap it up for today. If you've made it this far, thank you for tuning in. I'm really proud of how this script and video turned out. I've been working on this non-stop for a hot minute. The next video I'm working on should be out relatively soon, probably closer to the end of December or early January. It's my yearly closet tour and possibly room tour. I don't know, we'll see. As always, I want to thank you guys for being so supportive of the channel. And for those of you who are new here, welcome, and I hope that this is a nice place for you to stay and hang out. And if you're sticking around, thank you just as much. You guys are awesome. Anyway, I will not lie to you guys. I am extremely tired. I've been working non-stop on this script for like the past 3 days, so I am just excited to just get to crash as soon as I'm done recording this. I am dying. I am suffering. So anyways, with all that said, hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I hope you tune in for the next one. Yeah, so this is Sarah, Orifilled Criminal, and have a safe holiday season. Merry Christmas!